This video is an introduction to legal epidemiology for law students that want to use it for their final paper. Legal epi is a scientific study of laws and its deployment as a factor in affecting health outcomes. This video will help you prepare for your project because it gives you a step-by-step process to use when you are preparing your paper. It is, however, a simplified version of legal epidemiology, so it does not include some of the redundancies that a traditional legal epidemiology study would include. You're going to start off your project just like you would any other project by first picking a general topic. This topic should just be an area of interest to you, and it's subject to change. We'll definitely talk about narrowing it as we go forward. The second step is going to be for you to conduct some preliminary background research. What I mean by preliminary background research is this is a general pull of the literature so that you can become familiar with this area and make sure to keep track of what you have read and what you have searched, because you're going to revisit your background research a little bit later. So during this process, when you're conducting your background research, you're going to try to narrow down your topic into a research question. And so to do that, you should keep a journal of sorts where you write down questions that you might have as you read through the literature. You might pay attention to areas of research that are missing, or future research that is identified. What you want to focus on here is what you can contribute to the literature. What is going to be your unique contribution? How are you going to add to the literature that's already out there? What gaps can you fill? This takes us to our next step, which involves coming up with a research question. This research question should be specific as you can make it. Now, you're not going to come up with a research question that gives you a yes or no answer. It needs to be specific, but it needs to give you a little bit of room. You can try asking questions like how or why. Those usually help you come up with research questions. The next step that you are going to take part in is to choose your research design or your study design. Here in legal epi studies, you have two options. The first is to do a policy surveillance. A policy surveillance tracks laws over time. So if you do a policy surveillance, you're going to be looking at different versions of the same law and how it's changed, or that area of law and how it's changed over time. A legal assessment differs from this because with a legal assessment, you're examining laws only at one point of time, so you're not looking at changes over time. Now, which area you decide to pick is going to depend on your research question, and you may want to ask yourself, what are you trying to measure here? Are you trying to look to see how states have changed their laws in a particular area? Or are you just looking to see what the state of the law is at the current time? Step 5 is about developing a clear statement of purpose. A statement of purpose tells the reader what the purpose of your paper is, or the purpose of your project. What are you trying to prove? What are you trying to explain? If you have a clear statement of purpose and write it on a sticky note along with your research question and keep it near you, it may help you stay focused on your topic. Once you have decided what you want your research or your statement of purpose to be, it's then going to be time to revisit the literature. And this is step 6. So you're going to go back to that background research that you did, and you might need to even do a little bit more searching so that now that you have a more targeted question, you can search the literature in a more targeted way. When you're searching the literature, you're not just going to want to see what others have written. You want to get a sense for what the legal landscape is. What is the state of the law? What are people talking about? What reforms are people suggesting? What are the policy problems that the literature has pointed out? You're going to want to start to identify what the key features of the law that you're looking for. So for example, if you want to look at syringe service programs, you want to identify what are the features of a law that encourages the use of syringe service programs. What are those features? And how might the laws vary? So once you get an idea of what you're looking for, it's time to compile a sample of relevant laws and to review them. Now, when you're compiling your sample of relevant laws, you want to keep them to a small amount, but make sure that they are representative of the population that you plan on studying. So you should be thoughtful about the laws that you choose. And the reason is that we're going to analyze them and we're going to use them to develop a code book. And so if you do a better job at selecting the laws in your sample, then your code book will be more accurate. You will need to revisit and revise it less. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So think about whether or not they're representative of the types of laws that you are going to be studying in your study. Okay, then we go to step 8. This is when you're going to analyze the features of the laws. And right now you're just analyzing the features of the sample of laws that you pulled. What do I mean by analyzing the features? Well, you're going to start to look for patterns. And the patterns that you find in the law, you're going to list them. So you're going to make a list of the different elements of the laws that you find in different places. And then you're going to write a description of that category, right? So a feature is like a category. And so you'll go into Excel and just write the name of the feature of the law that you're looking for. So for example, say again, we're looking at syringe services programs. You're going to write down, and we're looking at a law. You find in that law it decriminalizes certain paraphernalia. Well, then you write down, decriminalize paraphernalia as a feature, and then go into the next column and describe what you mean by that code name, so that when you are coding later, you'll be able to remember it. So that list that you have becomes your code book. So now that you have your code book, you're going to go to step 9, which is to conduct a search of all the relevant laws. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you keep track of what sources you searched and what search terms you used. And you can put that in a journal, because this information is going to be what makes up your methods section. When you're trying to figure out how to conduct a search of all the relevant law, you're going to think about the scope of your project. If you're only looking at states, 2 states, for example, then all the relevant laws would be the laws in those 2 states. But you need to be explicit about whether or not you're looking at only statutes, whether you're looking at administrative regulations, or if you're including case law. So once you've downloaded all of the relevant laws, you're going to use your code book, and you're going to then go and code each of the laws. And you can do that in a simple Excel spreadsheet, where you have on one side the number of the law, or the name of the law, in the first column, and then horizontal above, you'll have each feature, and then you'll just put a check mark or an X if that pattern appears, or that feature appears in the law. Now, you may need to adjust your code book because you find that there is a new feature that you did not put into your code book. If you do that, that's fine. This is an iterative process. But when you have to adjust your code book, you have to go back and recode all of the laws that you have previously coded to make sure that that new code isn't there. So to avoid having to redo too many, you may want to code in batches, where you code 5 laws, make any changes to the code book, then code another 5 laws. That way, if you have to go back, then you're not necessarily having to go back and recode all the laws. Then, once you have coded all of your laws, you will have your data set. And your data set will look, this is what I was describing in the last step. You will have your states or the laws in that state, and then you'll have the features. And you'll be able to use that data set to create charts or display what you found in some way or other. So, like, these states have these features, and these other states have these other features, for example. Then you're going to write up your findings. What do I mean by your findings? You're going to write up your results. It's the results section. You are not going to add your interpretation here. You are just writing the results. So this many states have these features, these many states don't, etc., etc. Then step 13, you are going to write up your discussion section. And in your discussion section, this is where you're going to add in some of your interpretation. You can interpret what your results mean and explain what they why they are important findings. Then you move on to the next step, which is going to be to write your methods section. Your methods section is going to include, you're going to go back to your journal that you wrote, and you're going to tell the reader what exactly you did. The purpose of the methods section is so that if another researcher wanted to replicate your study, they could do that by following the instructions and doing exactly what you did. So you're going to put your search terms, sources, and study design. Then you're going to go back and write the background section, which is actually your introduction. So yes, I'm telling you to write your introduction nearly towards the end of the paper. This part of your paper, the introduction or the background section, is going to tell us what the literature already says on the topic. So it's a bit of a literature review. This is also where you can talk about the added value that your work is contributing to the literature. And at the end of your introduction, so you're going to spend your introduction setting up your research question. And at the end of your introduction, you're going to end with your statement of purpose. What is the purpose of this paper? Finally, you're going to go write your conclusion. When you write your conclusion, you may want to tie back to what you said in your introduction. Again, talk about the significance of what you found and why it's important, how it contributes to the literature. And then you're going to want to mention any future research that you think should be conducted to explore what you found even more. What would be the next steps? And that's it. So good luck on your final paper.